Hey guys, welcome back to my channel and back to another video. This video, I want to just get right into it. This video is probably going to be a little bit darker than my usual videos because it is addressing a very specific topic that is not going to be friendly to anybody who is under the age of, well, let's just say viewer discretion is advised. So I was scrolling through X and I came across a story that was reposted from Matt Walsh, and I went to the person's original page to get the full story and was blown away. Absolutely blown away in the worst way possible. I was disgusted. I was angry. I wanted to punch a wall. I posted about it on my YouTube community tab to let you guys know, just a fair warning, I'm going to be talking about this topic very soon because it just blew me away. It disgusted me, and I just couldn't believe what was happening. And it made me think about how certain people, and we know who they are, get special treatment. The same group that claims to always be victims, the same group that claims that the world is against them, the same group that claims that they can't get ahead in life because the world is always targeting them in a negative way, even though they represent less than 1% of the population, and yet they still get treated as if they are fragile by every entity in our society. I'm talking, of course, about trans-identifying people, specifically trans-identifying men in this video. So let me just log on to X. So I went to the Twitter page, Redux, I think that's how you say it, REDUXX. And this account appears to be an account that is pro-woman, pro-child safeguarding. So I'm assuming they are tired of the nonsense and the war against biological women. And their page is about really exposing the craziness that is happening in our world today when it comes to topics like what I'm about to talk about. So if you scroll, we're going to go to this story, which says, exclusive. A trans-identified male in Kentucky will not be sent to prison despite pleading guilty to SAing a baby while working at a daycare. Maria Childers struck a plea deal after hiring a trans activist lawyer to represent him. Don't you love it? Of course, of course. There's a specific trans lawyer for topics just like this, I'm assuming, right? So let's look over this story, shall we? A trans-identified male in Kentucky has reached a plea deal after being charged with SAing a baby and will avoid prison. Let me say that again. Will avoid prison. So long as he meets certain conditions. Maria Childers, a former daycare worker, hired a prominent trans activist lawyer to represent him in this sickening case. As previously reported by Redux, Childers was arrested in February of 2023 after the Department of Community-Based Services received an anonymous tip detailing an alleged incident of abuse that had occurred in November of 2022 at Explore Learning Academy. The tip, reportedly written by one of Childers' co-workers, accused him of making inappropriate comments towards an infant while changing the child's diaper and touching the baby inappropriately. I gotta just stop for a second. An infant. Now, any type of abuse against a child at any age is disgusting. We can all agree on that. But the fact that you would sexualize an infant baby, while changing their diaper, I can't even tell you, like, the amount of, like, anger that just piles up in me immediately. Like, and knowing how the story ends infuriates me even more. That's what really, really gets to me, is the fact that this person essentially got away with it. Spoiler alert. Redux has now obtained court records detailing the full complaint against Childers, which showed that he was accused of both physical and sexual abuse while employed at the daycare. Following the receipt of the initial anonymous complaint, a DCBS caseworker and a police officer from the Baduka Police Department went to the daycare on February 8th, 2023 to interview witnesses. After speaking to a number of staff, not just one, a number of staff, they were able to corroborate the anonymous report. Now, if you were able to speak to a number of the staff, that means that more than one person knew what this disgusting predator was doing. And I'm going to assume, because it's multiple children, that this was not in one day. This was not the first time. So tell me how it's possible that a daycare center could have a predator working at their center, abusing multiple children, and nobody knew? Nobody knew. It's like you can't even trust daycare centers now if you're a parent. Like, what do you do if you have to work full time? What do you do if both parents have to work full time and you have an infant child or a child under 1 and you need somebody to watch that baby? Lord. And you can see this nasty creep in the picture looking like Alice in Wonderland. Excuse me, Alex in Wonderland. According to witness testimony, a co-worker had asked Childers for assistance in changing an infant's diaper. While Childers was cleaning the baby's genitals, the co-worker noticed that the infant appeared to be in distress and asked Childers if he was hurting the baby. She then witnessed Childers rub the infant's in a circular motion while saying that was her area and she likes it. It just made her day. Okay. If I were the coworker and I was in that situation and this nasty predator creep said that in my presence, this story would be about how Chuck is in prison for, well, I'll just stop there. While Childers was reported to management at the academy, he was only given a write-up. Police later learned that Childers had also been accused by other co-workers of leaving the children in high chairs for hours without care. All right, this daycare center needs to be shut down. This daycare center needs to be shut down as soon as possible, if not already. How do you go to your management and tell them that one of the workers is abusing the babies, the infant babies, and that person gets a write-up? A write-up. Like, am I reading this correctly? While Childers was reported to management at the academy, he was only giving a write-up. You know, part of the reason why stuff like this happens and why it's so disgusting and why it spreads like wildfire is because of irresponsible people in leadership who do nothing like this daycare center, who decided to write up a sexual predator in their presence. Why? Were you scared of getting canceled? Because God forbid you fire a trans-identifying man, the most protected class in the entire freaking country? And the fact that he was written up or had been reported prior for leaving infants in high chairs for hours. Like, what does it take to get fired at this company? What does it take? After being taken to the police station for questioning, Childers initially claimed that he had not changed the infant's diaper at all. He later admitted to having done so after an officer presented him with evidence in the form of a text that he had sent to the daycare's director confirming the diapers had been changed. He then tried to deny he had ever said anything inappropriate, but admitted he often said things that were taken out of context. Yeah, I'm sure. Taken out of context, that's all. Nothing to see here, right? Childers was placed under arrest and charged with 1 count of first-degree sexual abuse of a victim under 12 and 3 counts of first-degree criminal abuse of a child under 12. He was then booked at the McCracken County Jail. Now, he only got 1 count of sexual abuse against a child, but I guarantee you this was not the first child. I guarantee you. So the fact that he only gets 1 count is so frustrating because I'm thinking about the other innocent babies that were also abused and perhaps a co-worker wasn't present, or maybe they were and just ignored it because this daycare center seems legit. Sarcasm. While Childers was initially marked as a male by both police and the jail, internal documents obtained by Redux reveal that his recorded sex was later switched to female by the McCracken County Jail. Why? This trans-identifying man abused a baby and had been abusing other babies at this facility. But all that matters is making sure that the correct pronoun is used for this predator. Because that's the world that we live in today. That's what's high priority. That. Not the babies. Court records show that just 1 month after being booked on the felony charges, Childers privately retained trans activist lawyer Madison Leach to represent him. Leach. What an appropriate last name. Leach. Because that's exactly what this community is to the world. A leech. Leach, a male who began identifying as a woman 7 years ago, was the first openly transgender candidate to seek public office in Western Kentucky when he ran as a Democrat for the Callaway County attorney seat. Leach recently threatened to leave Kentucky over Senate Bill 150, which would make it optional for public school teachers to use a student's preferred pronouns. Yeah. It's just fitting, isn't it? I'm gonna leave the state for pronouns. Cry me a river. After taking on the case, Leach submitted a motion to reduce Childers' bond, complaining that he did not have access to estrogen while in solitary confinement at McCracken County Jail. And here are, I guess, a list of the agreements of their bond. The defendant will participate in any programs and services of pretrial services. The defendant will obtain an ankle monitor device and will not be around children as a condition of her bond. The defendant will stay in contact with her attorney. The jail has a defendant in solitary confinement because she is a trans woman and has undergone hormonal changes. Solitary confinement can have many detrimental effects on the mind of the individual. Further, she is not receiving all of her medicines because some of the medicine she receives is in patch form. Not having her estrogen can have harmful effects on her body and mind. I love how we're putting their mind, body, and soul ahead of the babies that he abused. Ain't that something? It may be detrimental to his mental state. Oh, you mean like how it was detrimental for the babies to be abused on his watch? Like that? Not having estrogen could be harmful to his body. Oh, you mean harmful like the harm that he caused on those babies' bodies at the daycare center? Right. But God forbid, we punish a person who abuses babies by not giving them preferential treatment. God forbid. In fact, let's release them from jail altogether. Because we all know that the less than 1%, their comfort is everything. It comes first. Don't forget that. After some negotiation with the court, the motion was ultimately approved and Childers' bond was reduced from $100,000 to $5,000. Let me say that one more time. The bond was reduced from $100,000 to $5,000, which means he now only has to pay $500 instead of the original $10,000. Sounds about woke, because you only pay 10% of the bond. Bond conditions included no contact with children and to remain away from the daycare where he had been employed. Childers was released from custody in January of 2024. So this nasty predator is out and about. On January 29th, 2024, Childers struck an apparent deal with prosecutors in exchange for a guilty plea. His charge of first-degree sexual abuse of a victim under 12 was amended to Class A misdemeanor sexual misconduct, and the remaining abuse charges were dropped. I'm sorry, I gotta just pause for a second. So, his first degree charge of sexual abuse of a victim under 12 was pretty much erased. And instead of a felony, he was given a misdemeanor, which you all know misdemeanors get wiped out almost immediately. They're nothing. It's like it never happened. So in exchange for saying I'm guilty, let's reward you. Is that what we're going with on this one? We're going to reward a person who abuses infants by reducing their charge. Well, first, by reducing their bond completely, cutting it more than in half, and then reducing their sentence. And also getting rid of the other charges. You know, him leaving babies in high chairs for hours with no food, no milk, no care, no nothing. I'm just sick. I'm sick to death. I'm sick to death of our criminal system. I'm sick to death of the less than 1% getting treated like royalty. I'm sick of it. I'm sick of it. I'm sick of babies and children being targets for predators and not being protected. Not in daycares, not in schools, nowhere. Nowhere is safe. Judge Joseph Rourke handed Childers a 12-month penalty, but withheld sentencing and imposed a conditional discharge for 6 months. Of course. Of course. If Childers abides by the conditions set by the court during the 6-month period, he will not serve any prison time at all and may not even receive a criminal record. I'm done. I'm done. I'm done. I'm done. I'm done. So let's reduce his charge to 6 months. And if he's on good behavior within 6 months, we'll just erase everything. No criminal charges, no probation, record wiped clean, like it never happened. Which will allow this nasty predator to move to a different state and work at a different daycare. And guess what? When they run a background check, these sexual charges won't even show up. Because this predator is not required to be registered for sexual offenders, especially of children. Tell me how that makes sense, Kentucky. Please tell me. Please tell me how thinking of the conditions of this trans person was more important than the conditions of the babies that he abused. I'm gonna just say this. I no longer want to hear from the left, from the wokies, from the trans identifying community, from the gender mob, or as I call them, the gender cult. I no longer want to hear from them how trans people are the most underrepresented, how trans people are at the bottom of the food chain, how trans people need special treatment because trans people are constantly being victimized and are constantly being targeted. Really? Look around. Because what I see is the opposite. What I see is trans individuals, particularly trans identifying men, continuously given special treatment, getting slapped on the wrist for their crimes, making sure that their comfort is paramount to everything else. And this is the perfect example of what I'm talking about. You can't sit here and tell me that if this person identified as the sex that they were born as, who got accused of this, you can't tell me that that man would be given the same treatment. Not even close. Not even close. But all you gotta do in this society is say, I identify as the opposite sex, and suddenly everybody has to move mountains for you. Suddenly, let's put you in solitary confinement. Let's reduce your bond. Let's give you special treatment. Let's throw out your charges altogether. How about that? Want some coffee and tea too? Like, what else are we going to do to accommodate people like this? And the sad thing about it is that you do this, and guess what? You're only putting this disgusting predator back on the streets to possibly, because he most likely will, abuse more children. And the way that he was talking in that encounter with his coworker when he was saying the gross things that he was saying, that tells me that that was not his first time. That was not his first time abusing a child. That was not his first time doing what he did. It was not the first time. It was not. And I'm just thinking about all of the other children that he possibly injured, hurt, abused, destroyed, and got away with. And of course, he's going to hire a prominent trans lawyer, which blows my mind because shouldn't you just be a lawyer? Like, what does your transness have to do with anything when it comes to sexual abuse and crimes like this? Why does a trans individual need a trans lawyer to defend them with crimes like this? I'll tell you why. Because a trans lawyer knows all of the loopholes. Because a trans lawyer knows how politically incorrect it will be if the courts don't bend over backwards for a trans identifying individual. You want this, you must give it to us, or you'll be in trouble. And sadly, these institutions just say, okay, we'll back up. What do you want? Absolutely disgusting. And this guy knew exactly what he was doing when he decided to hire a trans lawyer and didn't hire just any lawyer, right? Like, he wanted a trans lawyer specifically for this reason, because he knew the system would have my back. And a trans identifying man representing me is like the cherry on top. And the courts did exactly what they knew they would do. It's so disgusting to me. I can't comprehend the amount of horror that this story is. Like, it makes me lose all hope in the system. It really does. It really, really does. Like, this is so low and disgusting. I can't even comprehend it. I can't. And reading this story, it makes me want to pull my hair out. It really does. Like, it's just so gross. It's so gross. And I just feel for the parents of that baby that he was abusing. And I feel for the future victims. Because I guarantee you this nasty creep is going to either continue to abuse in the state of Kentucky because his charges were wiped out and erased, or he will continue to abuse in a different state. We gotta do better. We gotta do better, and we have to stop. We have to stop bowing to this mob. We have to. And the way we start is by exposing stories like this on large platforms, talking about it, sharing, liking, commenting, making sure that stories like this don't get buried in the sand. And next time you hear somebody complaining about how trans people are treated like this, and trans people are treated like that, and trans people go through this, and trans people go through that, show them this story. And then tell them to shut up. That's all for today, guys. I'm sorry. I know this was a very dark story for me to have to report on, and I kind of contemplated if I wanted to do it or not because I know it's really dark, but I feel like we have to talk about these things. We can't just sugarcoat it. We have to talk about it. We have to address it head on, because that's the only way to combat this culture war that is happening in our country, where sexual predators get special treatment if they happen to be trans. Let me know in the comments down below what you think of this story. Are you shocked that this person got this type of treatment, or is it business as usual? If you enjoy my content, please do not forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Don't forget to hit my notification bell so you know when I post a brand new video. If you guys feel compelled to help me and support my channel, I will have a link to my PayPal as well as to my Cash App. Any funds that I make go directly back into this channel so I can continue to do stories like this. Until next time, peace.